Hello Trojan fans, welcome to a special 2021 wrap-up edition of the North Hall Football Coach's Couch.
2021 or 2022?
Well, it's the 2021 season wrap-up.
There you go.
It is actually 2022. Thank you, Coach. Again, I'm your host Jody Kinney, and I'm here with former North Hall head coach David Bishop, and I'm sure we'll cover that. But we weren't able to do any shows during the regular season, but we wanted to do a wrap-up show and cover a very eventful season, sort of in a nutshell, and tie a bow on a lot of things here. So, first let's get into just a brief recap of the season. Obviously, coming into the season, Coach, you're coming off the COVID year, which was just a massive amount of stress for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so, any kind of little bit of hangover from that coming in?
I think I think everybody did, and you look at just the whole dynamics of COVID and what it took out of people.
Mm-hmm.
We experienced kids that just walked away.
Right.
And I had friends that were coaches that just walked away.
Right.
And so I think you started to see that, and then as you talk to more coaches around the county and around the state, they were experiencing a lot of the same things. So I think there was definitely some type of hangover related to that, but what it is, I don't know. I think we're going to start to see more and more of that maybe over the next few years.
Right. And I mean, I know you mentioned losing folks. I know, and this isn't necessarily across the board universal, but just my observation, if other programs, I mean not just in North Hall, but everywhere, particularly large-scale extracurricular programs like football, like band, it just seemed numbers were down for everyone in general. And of course there were exceptions. All right, and then coming into the season, as opposed to last year, you did have a few coaching changes. Coach Nichols left for Hart County. Coach Brechter had being a community coach, he had a
Full-time job.
Yeah, his day job changed, and he wasn't able to work out a schedule that allowed him to participate. He promoted Cody Marchbanks, and you added Coach Pine from South Paulding. But all in all, the core of the staff was still a lot of continuity there. Bringing in some, Coach Pine and Coach Marchbanks both being pretty young guys, added a little bit more energy back to the staff.
Yeah, I think as a staff, there's no doubt in my mind it's one of the best staffs ever here, because we understand each other, we work well together. We don't always agree, right. but we do a great job of disagreeing, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And Coach Pine was a great fit when he came in here. Just picked up just like he'd already been here, and worked hard just like the rest of the coaches do. And Coach Marchbanks, being an alumnus, he loves the place,
right.
And a young guy who was willing to do anything he could to make the program better and to learn, and not think that he knew more than everybody. It was a great thing to know that you've got two young guys that you bring on staff that were just, hey, feed me, let me learn. So.
Right. All right, and then the makeup of the 2021 team. I know on the one hand there was a lot of optimism about it, and rightly so. We had a very senior-heavy depth chart. Really, the entire starting offensive line were seniors. Experienced running back at senior, returning senior quarterback. Two eventual number one, our first team All-State players, which we haven't had two on the team since 2012. But it was kind of fragile. There was some fragility to it as well. I believe it's the lowest overall participation rate we've had in the program in 20 years. I think we had 56 starting out.
Maybe. It might have been a little less. I can't remember the number,
right.
But it was definitely the lowest by a long shot.
Right. And, and with that low numbers and it being, with most of the returning minutes coming from seniors, there was really very little underclassmen experience to fall back on. So, strong shell, but I mean, you just had to hold your breath every time the trainer went out in the field.
There's no doubt, and I think some of the stuff that hurt early on was just, like I said, kids that have been a part of the program that I have great relationships just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And you could call them, and other coaches would call them, other players would call them, and no response. So it was different because you didn't expect that, and that was 3 or 4 kids. Well, you don't think much about 3 or 4 kids, but in the situation we were in this year, and those are kids that were on the field.
Right.
And so, and I think that, as well as the other things. But I think the other part that hurt us when you look at numbers-wise was the 9th grade, the rising 9th graders that came in. I think we had 8 of them. And so a lot of them chose to play only one sport, or they were going to do some fall league, whatever, and they just chose not to do football. And so that did hurt as a numbers game.
Right. All right, and then getting ready, going into the start of the season, right before the season starts, you had some personal family tragedy. You want to share about that?
Well, it was definitely difficult. We had known, and I had prepared our staff the year before because of my father-in-law. He was always touch and go for 8 months to a year, and so we had sat down, and I had said, hey, in the event of these situations, here's how we do things. And so I met with Coach Cunningham. At that time, I met with Coach Nichols. And so we had divvied that stuff. Well, obviously, Coach Nichols left, so then I had to work with Coach Welburn and try to get him to understand the things that needed to be taken care of. But losing my father-in-law the year before in Gilmer, it just worked out because of COVID. They couldn't have services, and I didn't have to leave.
Right.
Where had COVID not been in that situation, I probably would have had to have left last year in the middle of the year too. So April, I left Mom and Dad to go see Mom and Dad. Mom was in the hospital. Dad has Parkinson's and cancer, and he was in really bad shape. So somebody had to take care of him. And so I had spent a week down there. I remember getting out of the hospital and driving my mom out of the hospital, and she's like, hey, I'm afraid of what's going to happen for your dad because he was in such bad shape. She's like, and I'm like, Mom, Dawn and I already talked. If something happens, we'll take care of you. Not knowing, just a few months later, it would be my mom passing away, and that was very, very difficult because in March she was given a clean bill of health. Mm-hmm. In April, she was told she had an ulcer, and in May she was told she had 3-6 months to live. So that just spun everything out of control. And then obviously flying back and forth every few days, doing Midsummer, flying out there, coming back from Midsummer, and then the first few weeks of the season was that way. But just great staff that was able to keep things in check, and the kids understood what was going on. And it was an inside battle because obviously I wanted to be here,
right.
But I knew I had to be there.
Right. So and just to emphasize, I mean, just how many trips back and forth to South Florida did you take during that time?
Ooh, I don't know, to be honest with you. I know I don't fly, but I flew a lot. I had a friend that has a lot of miles, and he just said, you just go. So
I will go ahead and thank Mike Robertson for
yeah.
that. You get a shout out, Mike.
There you go, Mike.
It was you.
Probably 5 to 6, and that doesn't include the drives that I had out there during the summer and stuff. My wife spent the whole month of June away from me, taking care of Mom so I could do football.
Right. So I mean, that obviously, puts a huge physical and emotional strain on you, but which can't be discounted. I mean, I remember riding, with the equipment crew to the Paulding County game, which was a long trip, and you got in the back of the van, because everyone knew you were tired. You were with us for about 10 minutes, and then
laid out in the back seat.
And then, you know, despite all the traffic and you know, and the yelling at traffic, and
yelling at why did we schedule this game, Coach Bishop?
yeah, you were conked out the whole time until we were almost there. But beyond that, you know, as a coach, I know how much you're engaged with the players and the staff, and it had to feel like that disrupted that normal level of investment and involvement with the team that you usually have going into a season. So even once that was behind you, it still has some lingering effects. Do you think, didn't it?
I think so. I think emotionally more than anything.
Right.
I know, I'll be honest with you, when the season was over, there was just a lot of emotion left that I didn't get to deal with. Like, I mean, I don't know that I legitimately got to mourn my mom because I was here, there, and then when I got back here, it was go.
Right.
And so I think as the season wore on, now I don't think it took toll out of my coaching. I honestly believe that. It was my free time that when I could sit is where it really was a burden.
Okay. All right. So get into the season, and you probably know where I'm going with this because we talked about it before. One game I want to focus in on is the Hart County game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and just to give you just my synopsis of the Hart County game, got off to a real promising start, didn't quite make as much out of it as we should have. Went into a brief, almost a meltdown, where we just didn't look like we belonged in the field with them for a little while. Then there was like a regrouping and refocusing, and then right there in the middle, played really good football, and you know, got out big lead at one point, and really looked like the better football team. And then we talked about how, fragile isn't really the right word, but how tenuous some of this year was with the depth and everything, and how certain things could go against you and really break it. Well, you had one play that probably could have been blown dead by the officials, and ended up a long non-offensive touchdown for Hart County, turned the tide of everything. But and then while we had that extended run of good play, had a few injuries start to pile up, and then the tide of the game turned, and by the end of the game, you're looking around at who you could put in because the injuries started racking up, and you didn't have people. You're trying to put people in places they weren't used to being.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. As I look back, I say we ran out of guys and ran out of gas.
And we talked about that's pretty much the script for the entire season. Great start at Paulding County, but probably could have been better. Complete meltdown against Stevens County. Started to rebuild and refocus during the Hart County game, and started that run. Five straight games on the trot that we won. Played some really good ball, looking really dominant, but really started to pile up some injuries along the way, and then but managed to hold it together, and I'd say really held it together until the strip and score against Cherokee Bluff, and a play that probably could have been blown dead. In Hart County, it was the kickoff right at the goal line. Probably could have been blown dead. I thought he was in the end zone when we fielded it. I thought that play was dead, and all the ball's going in the end zone. Turned the tide, and when things started going against you, you just now you don't have the bodies to play catch up, and it just continued to snowball. Um, it's kind of a really, it's unlike any, the story arc of any season I've seen here at North Hall. It's such a big swings between the ups and the downs.
It was the thing that I will have to say that I'm most proud of, especially when it comes to season. I mean, I've never been a guy that believes that you preach championship, championship, championship.
Right.
Because when that's all you talk about, everybody in the state of Georgia and every football team in America says they want to win one. So that's a given.
Right.
It's what do you do in the process between now and then. And so the part of the proudness is the coaches found early before the season started, okay, we spent months tweaking little things, packages that we wanted to put in for different kids and personnel. And so you go out in the summer and you work on it and you get good at it, and we were pretty decent at it. And then you get an injury, and then you get a second injury. Okay, that package doesn't work anymore, so do you keep working on it?
Right.
Because it's not going to be as successful because it was designed for certain people. So you scrap that, and then you put in another package that maybe is not like that one, but to a degree. And then you start working on that one, and over a couple of weeks you're getting better at it. Because here's the thing, if you put a package in and you're not good at it and you put it out on a Friday night, that's your fault.
Right.
And so we only launch something when we feel it's ready for Friday night. And so we would work on something and somebody would get injured, and that package was sent to them. So you had to scrap that, and then we'd have to put in something else. We had sophomores this year that had to play 3 different positions.
Right.
Playing 1 is hard.
Right.
Playing 3 because of injuries is hard. It's crazy. And the fact that they're 10th graders is even more. So, but to be able to every week deal with that and just move forward and just, okay, now this is the game we're moving on to. It's part of our culture that we talk about. There's a formula that I love. It's called E plus R equals O. The event, all these injuries, and plus your response equals the outcome. So the thing that you have to be careful of is, how do you respond to the event?
Right.
I've got friends that are coaches that every time a player gets injured that's a starter, it's, the sky's falling and Chicken Little running around, and you can't do that. You have to be able to keep it at a level and find ways to, okay, this kid's not here. How do we circumvent that? Find the people that fit the process and continue to win and be successful.
Right. But still, at the end, and for those that don't know, I think we figured out that by the time we got to Carver, Atlanta, we only had 35 healthy kids dressed out.
At that point, we had 15 kids on the sideline at the Carver Atlanta game. I think it was 14 at Dawson.
Yes. So you only had 35 kids, and if I remember right, 3 of them were kickers. And which I mean, as great as first team All-State kicker Luke Brown is, I don't think we wanted him playing outside linebacker.
No.
Or safety or any of the other kickers. So as position players, you got 32 players to work with, and so, most of the seniors survived, but there was, but even with that, in relative terms, we were lucky with the linemen. That was where we saw probably the fewest number of injuries, but we did lose Kyler Olson, center, for the playoff game. But the running backs and the defensive backfield was trench warfare.
We figured it out that there were 21 players this year, JV and varsity, that missed games. Right. And on the varsity level, we missed nearly 80 games.
Right.
It's kind of hard to be successful when we have that situation.
Yes, and so it does. Like I said, and we're not trying to make excuses by any means.
I'm proud of the way it was handled, to be honest with you. So.
But the simple fact is, the kids went out on the shield, and coaches Um, you did everything you possibly could to put them in a position to win, but let's face it, you can't go to Carter Atlanta, which ended up being the runner-up team in the state, with 35 bodies.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody could do that. So, all right, so the season ends, and you and I talked about this, but I just want you to kind of share with us, what you experienced at the end of the season. You touched on it a little bit, but how that led to your decision to step down as head coach.
I'll be honest with you, the last 2 or 3 years have worn on me. As a person, as a coach, as a professional. And to be straight with you, last year I was toying with this already. I think dealing with, and this was before my mom even passed.
Right.
I was like, do I need to move closer to my dad? Because I'm the one in the family that's gonna take care of what needs to be taken care of. I am inside a pleaser, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to help and please. That's why I got in the profession. I did not go to school to be a teacher or a coach. It's when I got out into the business world and was miserable and realized I do what I do. What is it I love to do? And it was help people. So that's how I got into this. But so last year I'll be honest with you, I applied for a job in South Georgia, and nothing came of it. And I was like, okay, God, you're telling me this is where I need to be. I'm good, and we're moving forward. And so wasn't that I really wanted to. It was just the turmoil of everything that I'm dealing with personally. And so when the season got over this year, there was a true flood of emotions. I found myself crying. A lot of it just over my mom, because like I said, now that everything was still,
right.
I could not. I finally was able to just deal with some of it. Typically at the end of football season, I go with Coach Daniels, the former athletic director. We go to South Georgia. We go hunting for about 4 days, and I come back that Monday. I'm energized. I'm ready to go. And this year I came back, and after a day, I was not ready to go. And so that worried me, and it bothered me. And a few weeks later, I went fishing for about 4 days in Florida with Coach Christmas, and we talked a lot and tried to talk through a lot of different things. And I felt like when I got back, I'd be energized and ready to go, and I wasn't. And so it worried me a lot. And I sat down with Mr. Borg and Mr. Wells and said, guys, there's something wrong. I don't know what it is right now, but I don't know what God's plans are for me. But right now I have a very uneasy spirit about where I'm at. And so I need you to know that. I said, and I'm also going to apply for a couple jobs just because right now maybe that's where God wants me. There was an allure to 2 different places. Nothing came of it. So for me it was like, okay, all right, God, what is it you've got? Because I am totally uneasy with everything. And so it just continued to snowball until the point I made the decision I made.
Okay. So I just want to be clear to address some of the rumors floating around.
Absolutely, because there are a lot. One of them is I'm moving back to Virginia to take care of my dad, who's never lived in Virginia. So
right. Yeah. Okay. And you weren't forced out by the administration.
No, absolutely not.
There was no buyout or anything like that. This was 100% Dave Bishop decision.
It was my decision. Obviously, we talked about it. A lot of people were, Mr. Borg and Mr. Wells and Stan Lewis and Will Schofield are probably 4 of my best supporters. And so they've got my back, and I could stay here. I could stay here as long as I want to stay here. And so that was not a piece of it. When it comes to the other stuff, I don't want to get into a lot of the talk, but nobody paid me or
right.
And like I said, I'm not going to get into all that. There's always noise, to be honest with you. Every year there's noise. There's always a grumbling of some piece because somebody's always got a better idea.
Right.
But this year, obviously, there was a different type of noise.
Right.
And, you know, I've been praying, God, just give me wisdom and give me a sign of some sort to let me know if I need to stay or go. And when that arose in that moment, that was enough for me to say, okay, that's what I need to know. And that was enough for me to say, you know, was it the reason? No,
Right.
it was not, but it was enough for me to look at it and say, nah, that's not a piece of what I want to be a part of at that point.
Okay.
That piece, not North Hall.
Right, right. And, yeah, you already talked about the support you had from Principal Billy Wells, Assistant Athletic Director Sam Borg, and others. I know those guys are close to you, but as a coach, you know, a lot of people don't know that Mr. Wells used to be Coach Wells and was quite a successful head coach himself at Collins Hill and Lanier before moving into administration up here. How much has it meant to you, you know, on top of your personal relationship, with having the support of someone who, you know, a principal who is very, very knowledgeable of football himself, you know? And
It is because the conversations that you have aren't always like, hey, congratulations.
right.
Sometimes they get it. He never sticks his foot into the X's and O's, if that makes sense. But there's times he's like, I have no idea how we did that tonight. That was awesome.
Right.
You know, and because he understands it. He understands. He doesn't just understand X's and O's. He understands X's and O's and Jimmy's and Joe's.
Right.
And that part of it, as well as he understands the importance of doing things the right way. And while I may not be the best coach in the world, I can hang my hat and say I've tried to do things the right way. And I do know that he's super appreciative of that.
Good. Okay. So, what's next for Dave Bishop?
What is next? To be honest with you, I've got a couple of job opportunities right now, and I'm probably going to turn one down. At this point, I'm probably going to step away from coaching. Something I just didn't think I'd get here, but something I think I need to do.
Right.
Been doing it for 30 years, and my wife said something to me the other night that has stuck because I got done with an interview. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Got done with an interview, and she asked me how it went. I said it went great. Told her all the great things about the job and the pay and everything else, and just said, I don't know. And she looked at me and she said, you've faithfully given 30 years of your life to everybody else and given up what you love. Maybe you need to go do what you love. And so, excuse me, I haven't cried about this yet. This is the first time I've done it. And it was weird. At that moment, I was like, okay, whatever, honey. Because I do love to hunt, I do love to fish, I do love other things.
Right.
And for 30 years I've given them up.
Right.
And in the last 5 or 6 days since having that conversation, you know, people ask the same question. And so I've answered it just like I told you, and every one of them has said, your wife's wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't expect that from some people, to be honest with you.
Right.
People that are in the coaching profession and real good friends of mine. And as a matter of fact, one guy wants to hire me, and he said, at the end of our conversation, he said, can I say 2 things to you before we get off the phone? I said, absolutely. He said, as a coach, I'm going to do everything I can to get your butt here. I'm going to be selfish as crap. I know you can help me. I know that you can change the program that we have here, and I'm going to go back to my principal and ask for anything I can get to get you here. As your friend, you need to take your wife's advice. And I've heard that 7 times in the last 5 or 6 days, and last night it was kind of, maybe this is what I need to do. So.
Okay. All right. get away from the weekly a little bit.
Well,
I'll give you-
I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect that, because
Oh.
like I said, I've not cried about that yet.
I've known you for a while, I expected you to get weekly. All right. Just want to hit some of your accomplishments and go over them, and some of them are pretty obvious. You've been here 8 years and you know, accumulated the second most wins as a head coach in North Hall in the 65-year history of North Hall football. 7 straight playoff appearances, something no other head coach has done. Twice as a number 2 seed, 4 times as a 3 seed, and once as a 4 seed. You have the only road playoff win in school history. And if you combine your career here as a head coach and an assistant coach, I pulled some pretty off-the-wall stats for you here. In that 21 years, you've been involved in 54% of the school's wins. You know, like I said, in 21 years versus the first, 40 years. You've primarily been an offensive coordinator under Coach Christmas, and still that was one of your primary things still as a head coach. 64% of the points scored in North Hall history were scored with you coaching the offense.
That's the way you are pulling stuff out.
And the 17 highest scoring teams in school history, also under your tutelage, and it's actually 19 out of the top 20.
Yeah, my first year, and Bob's first year, we didn't win score a lot of points.
No, you didn't. But those weren't the worst in North.
No, they weren't. But they were in the 21.
Yes, they, even as that was number 21 on the list in terms of the scored. It still ranks in the top 30
There you go.
of North Hall seasons in terms of points scored. Like I said, I could go on for a while. These are just kind of figures. You know, I want to know what are you most proud of? What accomplishment are you most proud of in your 21 years coaching at North Hall?
I think just taking something, when we left Bainbridge, and I remember, and people have heard me say this before, but I remember driving through the middle school parking lot to look at the field for the first time, and before we ever took the job, and Coach Christmas had just taken the job, and driving past what at that point was the foundation being built of the baseball facility, because it was just going up. And I remember, because you could look through at that point, there wasn't no baseball building there, and looking at him just saying, what are we thinking of? Is this where you want to go? This place is a dump.
Yeah.
And I had no prior knowledge of North Hall High School. God bless him, and he became the principal of Bainbridge High School. He was on our staff. Unfortunately passed away from COVID this summer, Roy Matthews. And remember Roy before I left, and his comment was, I'll bet you a paycheck that we win a playoff game before you win a regular season game. And I was like, I'll take that bet. Of course, at that point, I didn't realize that he had a legitimate point. But just seeing a community come together, rally behind your vision that Coach had brought into this point, and change, I believe, the trajectory of not just football, but from every program moving forward, and just the support that a large group of people, even today, continue to do, and so appreciative of what you've done.
Okay. Flip side of that, if you could pick one thing to do differently, what would it be?
I'd have to say, as a head coach, and I'm going to go this from a head coaching perspective, I feel like when you get in and you're going, you always say, I got to get these people back involved, or I've got to ask them for help from time to time, or I need to do something. And you just never find that time because you're so dealing with the now,
Right.
and you never get to do that piece of it. The Jim Siphon, or the Steve Siphons, the Jim Will Hoyts, the Scott Heads, and people like that who are tremendous men in this community that helped be a part of that. And there's so many more, Steve Parks, and just not really do other things for those guys because of what they've done here.
Okay. Well, that's a great answer, but it's incorrect. The correct answer is you would not have white jerseys with white numbers on them.
Well, they weren't white numbers; they were outlined in black.
They were.
Okay, all right. I don't know if that's my worst, but it looked cool
in the picture.
in the picture.
You-
It looked good when you put them on.
You remember
I
what?
didn't have to look at them from the press box. I got to look at them from the
Right.
field.
Do you remember when I told you at picture day that day when I walked up?
Yeah.
Didn't even say hello.
Yeah, I know.
I walked up to you and said, "Don't you dare have a whiteout game."
Yeah.
And working in the press box, whenever we had those, we had to apologize to the PA announcer.
Nobody knew the numbers.
It was those were.
I fixed them. I got them
You got it fixed. Okay. All right. Some memorable moments. I'll spot you Luke Brown this year because I'm sure that his game-winning field goal, homecoming against Chestatee, 43-yarder. I'm sure that's somewhere on the list. Give me up to formal with the standout.
I'd have to say Madison County, year one.
Okay.
That was an unbelievable game.
Right.
That was to end the year and really give us momentum going into year two. Those seniors that had dealt with 21 straight losses, I think it was 21, and to get that win on their last game, I remember the tears that they shed that night.
Right.
Not just because their season was over and that their career was over, but they ended in a win and something they hadn't had in over 2 years. That was definitely an awesome one. The first playoff win in school history against Towers here, that was pretty exciting. And believe it or not, you look at the Perry game, the game you had to win here to go to the Dome, which was an awesome experience. Even though we didn't win, it was an awesome experience. And the part of that I will always remember the most was, you're at a game, you shouldn't be paying attention to the crowd. Some coaches do, some players do. The only thing I do in the crowd is I've done it for a long time, is as I come out on the field, I look because I know where my wife's sitting, I smile and blow her kiss, or just, give her a little smile.
Right.
And that's it. But I remember after the Cairo game and shaking hands and turning around and seeing the number of North Hall people at the Georgia Dome standing up, giving us ovation, that made me cry right then and there. I was just like, wow, there was a lot of people out there. So that was definitely an amazing emotional event. I think one of the playoff wins that most people don't even talk about, but was probably one of the best wins ever, was against Hart County in 08.
Mm-hmm.
We should have never won that game.
Right.
That team was loaded. As a matter of fact, their coach had already made massive plans to exchange tape. Back in those days, you actually had to go physically exchange tape with the coaches, and the coach from Dunwoody had already said, "Don't you think you're putting the cart before the horse?" And he's like, "I'm not worried about winning this one. We're good." And to win it in the fashion we did was awesome. I think the Peach County game, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was.
And in case you don't know, you got to go look it up on YouTube, because if you're bored one day and you want to just watch an awesome game, they have it from their announcer's perspective.
Right.
And it is fun to listen to, as much fun as it is to watch. It's even more fun to listen to them, how the game started and how they were talking, to where it got by halftime, and by the end of the game, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that a lot of people don't know is, in the coach fraternity, you get to you get to see and meet coaches after everything. And I remember I was at a clinic and a guy came up. He's like, "You're a North Hall coach?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm a Peach County coach." He said, "You got a minute?" It's like, "Yeah." And he said, "Just a couple stories." And so I know this is not where we're going down a rabbit trail here, but it's just, it adds to the coolness about that night. And he said, I guess it was DeMarcus Robinson, who now plays for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
He was the receiver that night, and the coach said, he said, the first thing I felt like I had to do was to get a gauge on number 14, who was Andrew Smith. He said, so during warm-ups, I did everything I could to get as close to that cat as I could, because he was a really good football player. And he said, I got within 2 or 3 feet and looked down at him, and I walked back to the coach and said, "It's going to be a long night for North Hall." And he said, "Dang, if number 14 didn't prove us wrong." And then he said their head coach, as they walked into the field house, he held the coaches outside. He said, "What do we tell our kids? This has never happened in Peach County history, let alone while we were here." So those are neat things. They've never experienced that bad of a loss, and so it was kind of a fun night. And then obviously just a few things from along the way. I mean, I think the LFO game, first road win, was awesome in the playoffs, and there's just so many different things. You look at 21 seasons, there's chock full of memories. So.
Right. Yeah, the Peach County game, go back to that. You may not realize this, I was actually a guest on their radio show pregame because I was doing stats then.
Yep.
That was actually Tom Smiley's last game.
Mm-hmm.
Before I took over, but I was doing stats, and I had some connections down there, and so they contacted me and said, "Hey, you want to be on the pregame show?" I was like, "Okay." So I went and talked to those guys after just to talk to them after the game, wasn't trying to gloat everything, and they were just utterly shell shocked.
Yeah.
And I saw their head coach, and he was just glassed over. And it was probably about that time it was right after the game, but I don't think they'd gone back in the locker room yet, and it may be that time where he's just standing there thinking, what do we tell the kids? But like I said, you mentioned we ended DeMarcus Robinson's high school career right here. Going back to the Perry game, he ended Casey Hayward.
Who
was still playing in the NFL.
Right. Yeah.
His high school career ended right here at the Brickyard. So we put a nail in a couple of NFL players' careers.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. The questions that I didn't warn you about.
Great. Just realized that since you didn't warn them, I don't have to answer them.
Oh, yeah, now you do. All right. I know your coaching staff teases you. I know your coaching staff teases you a bit about being the Michael Scott from The Office version of coaching. So give me the most Michael Scott thing you said to the team. the most awkward, wish I hadn't said that thing you've ever said to the team.
Well, I try to forget those things, so to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm sure they've got a list of them though, but
actually, yes, they do.
Yes, and they probably use them against me quite often in a joking manner. But those are things that I can't lie that I just try to forget.
Right. Yes. So
I'm sure you may have one that you remember.
Oh, I've got several. Unfortunately, this is a family show. Most of them have a lot of unintentional double entendres. If you would like a complete list, please contact Coach Jason Crisp or Coach Todd Welburn.
Yeah,
they do have
yes.
a notebook.
And just so you know, you are correct. Those went without actually having real meaning. It just happened.
No, it was. It was. Oh my gosh, what did I just say? I hope they didn't hear it that way. And of course. Usually couldn't get away with it because Crisp is doubled over in the background.
Just so you guys know, it is the day after the national championship, so they are playing the Georgia fight song over the PA right now.
Right.
Sorry, Jody.
Yeah. It's, I'll muddle through it. Speaking of Jason Christmas, second question, rough estimate, so if you were the Michael Scott, he used the Kinney from South Park on the staff. So how many times did you tell Jason Crisp he was fired, but he came back to work anyway?
That would go a long way. I mean, jokingly, I think the best joke, a part of that was, it all kind of stemmed. There's two ways it stemmed, but it was pretty funny. The first time I introduced him to another coach from college that had been walking through recruiting, and I said, "Hey, this is my ex-coach." Now, as coaches, we understand that X is receiver, and Jason thought, "You didn't tell me I was fired." So there was that piece, and then there was the other piece. Coach Christmas and I were in Arkansas. We were doing a personal clinic for a team in Arkansas. They had invited us out, wanted us to install stuff for them over there in Arkansas, and Coach Christmas and I were at dinner at this Irish restaurant that everybody said you need to go eat at, and it was pretty amazing. Well, Jason, the Geico commercial with the guy who's like the commander of the spaceship, he lost his keys, which I do quite often, and he sent that out to the whole staff and said, "Hey, here's our commander." And so what I did was find a meme of Donald Trump that said, "Hey, you're fired," and it was, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired." So that kind of launched that piece there.
Right. It's being friends with Jason. Hey, I only got fired twice this week. So, what are you going to miss most about coaching here at North Hall?
Wow, that's a loaded question. There are just so many things. I think, without trying to be negative, because it's not, in 8 years of being the head coach, I've had 2 college level players. I mean, I've had a couple kids that could have probably played some Division III or NAIA if they chose to, but the thing about North Hall is a lot of our kids' grades are so great that while they may want to play college football, they'd have to pay a lot more to go play than go somewhere they really want to go as an academia school. So going out every week, competing at a high level, and seeing young men that maybe the college football world doesn't see as great players. For me, seeing them compete every Friday night and not just beat teams that they're capable of beating, but sometimes beating teams that on paper that we shouldn't beat, and doing that, those are things that I always consider to be super rewarding. Seeing, and whether it's here or somewhere else, but I feel like when we came here, our focus as coaches was, when I say coach, I'm talking about Bob and I, because we'd been together 5 seasons before that. Our focus changed a little bit towards the kids in the recreation. Not that it wasn't before, but we really put the Brickyard is special.
Right.
I had the opportunity to coach in Region 1 with Lowndes, Valdosta, Colquitt County, and all those teams, and the Friday night atmosphere didn't match this place, and so that was always, to me, special. I think what we've done out here with the tailgating that started back in that far corner on the football field concrete pad that most people don't know about.
Right.
Those will be things we miss. Just being at a place that's not even in a place.
Right.
If that makes sense. North Hall, it's a Gainesville address, but it's not in Gainesville.
Right.
It's not in Murrayville, it's not in Claremont. So when you ask people where you live, you say North Hall. Right. And there's no place on the map that says North Hall. Right. So there's just so many different things about this place that are special.
Right. All right. And I know you've already talked to current players and coaches, but I'm sure there's a lot of former players and coaches out there. What would you like to say to them?
Man, just thank you. Thank you for your efforts, for your desire to do the things that we've asked. And I tell our kids all the time, I said, guys, there's nothing I can do to make you give the effort that you give. That's a choice.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that is built on the culture that we have here, the trust that we have among the players and the coaches. And so the thank you goes to those guys, because without their willingness to do what they do and their level, I guess we're going to play it again, and the level at which they did, I don't think we have the success we have. So I'm so appreciative of those guys and proud of them. You know, when I start seeing them now when they're almost 40s, and what they have accomplished as dads and professionals and stuff like that, it's exciting, because I've been somewhere 20 years to see, like, for instance, probably the most emotional thing that happened on the day I resigned and met with the team was the day I got here. Chris Haynes was here.
Right.
And the moment I said I was done, Chris Haynes was in the back of that room. And so got to see that growth from so many kids, and I'm so appreciative of those guys over the years.
Right. Then lastly, just final words to the North Hall community.
You know, when it comes to this community as a whole, it has been amazing. My kids came through the elementary schools, they came through the middle schools, they came through the high schools, super involved up here. So I got to not just experience North Hall as a coach, I got to experience it as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been at multiple communities through my career, but this was probably the one that took us in as if we were already their own.
Right.
A lot of times you're always the outsider.
Right.
I never felt that way here, and so from day one, that's always been the feeling here. And I just, like I said, I can't be more thankful and appreciative, because the stuff that the groups that are coming through are going to experience now is not only because of the players, but it's because of the parents in the community that was willing to come out here and put their time, effort, and money into this and turn it into something that, you know, whether people recognize it or not, North Hall High School, regardless of winning a state championship, is regarded as a class program and is well respected throughout the state. And so that is because of you and all the things that you've done. And man, I just, as a person, a community member, there's pride. As a coach, there's thankfulness and pride, and then there's also that parent that is appreciative, because my kids got to experience all of that. And I've not lived anywhere in my life longer than I have here. So all this is super emotional, being part of this community. And so, man, thank you.
Okay. Well, before we wrap it up, yeah, just like to say on a personal level, Coach, thank you for your friendship. First and foremost, I have, you know, you and I have gotten to know each other over the past 10, 12 years. You know, I really didn't interact with you a lot. First few years here, because I had small kids and I was just kind of hanging around. But you know, I'm thankful for your friendship and thankful for the impact you've had on me and my kids and my family and my community. And being a native of here, I've seen the impact of what you brought in 21 years here, and I just want to thank you for that. And love you, Coach.
Thanks, I love you too, Jody. You've been very special, especially over the last few years, and your willingness to just give back to your community is pretty awesome.
So, thank you, Coach. And that's going to wrap it up for the one and only Coach's Couch of this season. So I think as we've talked about what went on this season, I think you understand why we weren't able to get it restarted this year. But we just want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you Coach Bishop's going to be here a while. David Bishop at hawkhood.org. If you would like to drop him a note of appreciation, I'm sure he'll love that. On behalf of Coach Bishop, thanks for tuning in. Go Trojans.
Go Trojans. So, thank you, brother. Thank you. Love you too, man. It's, yeah, I don't know, last night it was just, you know, I've got to call the guy today and